My stepbrother spent 10 years destroying my life. While my mom ignored it, now she's begging for forgiveness as he faces legal trouble. For years, my mom painted a picture of a perfect family, one that always seemed just out of reach. But behind the smiles and forced harmony, I was trapped in a world where my stepbrother's cruelty was overlooked, and my pain was ignored. I tried to be the bigger person, but no matter how hard I tried, the walls kept closing in. This is the story of how a perfect family wasn't so perfect after all, and how walking away was the only option left. My home life was nothing like the happy mixed family that my mother pretended we had. Her new husband's child made each day terrible. And nevertheless, I was always expected to be the bigger person. Years passed, and things worsened instead of improving. Eventually, I walked away from everyone. My mother is attempting to contact me again, but I doubt she will be pleased with my response. So, when I, 25, male, was 9, almost 10, my mother, 44, female, sat me down at the kitchen table with a big fake smile on her face, the type she uses when she's trying to sell me something I won't want. She informed me she'd been seeing someone for a while, and that things were becoming serious. His name was James, and he was 47 years old. Jake, his 22-year-old son, was 7 years old. I'd met James before. He seemed like a pleasant enough guy, shook my hand, and referred to me as champ, which every adult who doesn't know kids thinks is awesome. I didn't dislike him, but then she hit me with the big one. We were planning to move in with him. She was acting like it was a dream scenario. "It's going to be great. You'll have a brother," Mom told me. "He's younger than you, so you can be a good role model." I just sat there thinking I didn't ask for a sibling, and I certainly didn't ask to live in another kid's family, but I didn't say it. I simply inquired whether I had to. She grimaced and continued. "Families stick together. This is a good thing for all of us." I suppose the first time I met Jake was remarkable. Mom took me to James's apartment for dinner. Jake waited in the doorway, as if I'd just pulled up to steal his bike. No smile, no hi, nothing, just a frown. James urged him, "Go on, say something." Jake murmured, "Hi," as if spitting out a bug. Dinner was weird. Every time I tried to talk, Jake would interrupt or make a noise to confuse me. When I asked him what grade he was in, he said, "Why do you care?" His father gave him a swift, "Jake," in that warning tone, but the boy didn't even flinch. After dinner, Mom and James went into the kitchen to talk, which basically meant gushing about how great things were going. Jake and I were left in the living room. He stared me full in the eye and stated, "This is my house. My room is bigger. Don't touch my stuff." I simply shrugged. But deep down, I knew this was going to be terrible. When we formally moved in a few months later, I discovered that my new room was the smallest in the house. And Jake's was outfitted with everything a 6-year-old could want: posters, toys, and his own television. Mine resembled the spare guest room that someone half-heartedly attempted to make child-friendly with an old blanket and a barely functional bulb. Jake made it a point to remind me every day of my status as an extra throughout my first week there. He'd pass past my room and say, "You don't belong here," then scurry away before an adult could hear him. At first, James looked to be on my side. If Jake got caught being a jerk, he'd tell him to stop it. But then I began overhearing things. Once, after I ordered Jake to stop shoving me in the hallway, James drew him aside and whispered, "Don't let him push you around. Stand your ground." It wasn't loud, but I heard it. And Jake's expression after told me he'd just been given a free pass. Jake accidentally spilled juice on my math assignment one afternoon about a month ago. I grabbed his wrist before he could run away laughing, and he began shrieking as if I had broken his arm. Mom rushed in, saw him pretending to cry, and instantly turned on me. "What is wrong with you?" she said. "He's younger than you. Be the bigger person." I tried to explain what occurred, but she cut me off with, "You're just like your father. Don't ruin this for me." That one hit me differently. She never talked about my father until she was angry. And now it appears that she was using him as a warning label for me. Jake stood behind her, smirking. In that moment, I knew I couldn't win. Every time I attempted to defend myself, it only made me the problem. After that, I stopped telling Mom when Jake did something. I knew she'd either make an excuse or blame it on me. James, however, was a mixed bag. Some days, he would tell Jake to back off. Other times, he'd just say, "You two need to get along." As if it was a mutual thing. Spoiler, it wasn't. The remainder of the school year was like walking on glass. Jake made it clear he didn't want me around. Mom made it clear that she would not rock the boat for me. I recall lying in bed one night, hearing her and James laughing downstairs and thinking, I guess I'm just an accessory in this happy little family package. Jake was only 7, and if he was already doing this, I couldn't imagine what the following few years would be like. It turns out I didn't need to imagine. He showed me. The first major sabotage campaign began around 3 months after I moved in. It was Tuesday night. I had a science project due the next morning, one of those poster board projects that required a nice display complete with diagrams and everything. I left it on my desk and went downstairs for dinner. When I returned, there was a large streak of chocolate pudding across it. It's not even like it was dumped. It was smeared. Jake sat on his bed across the hall, licking a spoon like a cartoon villain. I didn't even bother asking if he had done it. Of course he did. I attempted to restore it, but the entire middle section was wrecked. The next day, I had to bring it in like that, and my teacher gave me a dissatisfied expression, as if I'd just been lazy. That was merely the beginning. He would mistakenly delete my files from the family computer if I left them open. We used the same login, so he could easily go in and mess things up. He even changed the names of my homework files to something strange, so I couldn't find them until it was too late. And it wasn't only my coursework. He started grabbing my belongings, bending my trading cards, snapping the points off my pencils, and flinging my books across the room, causing the pages to bend. I had a little collection of model vehicles that I'd been assembling with my grandfather. He grabbed one and crushed it on the kitchen floor while no one was looking, then kicked the fragments under the fridge. When I informed Mom, she merely sighed, as if I was overreacting. You can rebuild it. It's not the end of the world. You need to learn how to get along with him. I quickly realized that get along in her thinking meant don't make him angry. It wasn't only at home. Jake also made sure to destroy school for me. That first year, he developed a rumor about me cheating on a math test. I didn't even have the same class as him, but the word got around. When I entered the lunchroom, people started whispering. Even some teachers treated me differently until the principal ordered everyone to shut it down. The physical symptoms also worsened. He would slam doors as I walked through, catching my hands or feet. He once swung the restroom door so violently that it impacted my shoulder, leaving me with a week-long bruise. He'd toss things at me, small objects like erasers or toy cars, just to see how I'd respond. If I ignored him, he would escalate to the point where I couldn't. And the thing was, James would admonish Jake just enough to make him feel like he was doing something, but he never actually stopped him. I observed him say Jake several times, "Don't let him boss you around," which translates to, "Keep doing what you're doing, just don't get caught." As I began to spend more time at the library after school to complete schoolwork without fear of him messing it up, I'd carry everything to my friend Jake's house and do it there. Mom assumed I was just making friends and was pleased with it. I did not bother to explain the genuine cause. It only became more ludicrous from there. Once I left my backpack in the corridor while I went to get a drink. I returned, and it was gone. I discovered it outdoors, open, with my belongings spread on the grass. Jake was riding his bike in circles across the street, beaming as if he'd won the lottery. Mom's response: "You shouldn't leave your things unattended." This started an ongoing pattern. He would do something. I would either deal with it or inform her. And she'd either agree with him or advise me to let it go. I stopped expecting anything different. The worst part was knowing it wasn't going to be a phase. He was not growing out of it. He was growing into it. And every time an adult dismissed it, it was like giving him more tool to use against me. By the end of our first year together, I'd developed a mental map of where I could hide my belongings, when it was safe to use the computer, and which rooms in the home provided a good view of the hallway so I could see if he was approaching. I was just 10, but I felt like I was preparing my life to escape a landmine. Jake was just getting started. By the time Christmas arrived that first year, I'd already reduced my expectations to the basement. At the very least, I expected the holiday to be unpleasant. Jake may make a few snarky comments. Maybe he was trying to unintentionally knock over my hot chocolate or something. I was not prepared for how far he would go. Mom and James had arranged a large family holiday at our home. Both sides were invited. The house was full of people. On Christmas morning, we opened our gifts as usual. I actually received a couple of great ones: a new set of drawing pencils from my grandparents, a tiny model kit from my uncle, and a sweatshirt that I'd been wanting for months. For over an hour, I hoped Jake would finally leave me alone. Then I went to the restroom. When I returned, my presents were gone from the couch where I had put them. At first I wondered if Mom had moved them. Then I saw it. The destroyed model kit box in the garbage, my hoodie thrown into the fireplace grate, and my pencil set scattered across the kitchen floor, half of the tips broken. Jake stood there with two of his cousins, trying not to laugh. I just stared at him, and he shrugged, as if to say, "What are you going to do about it?" I lost it. I stepped over and began gathering up the pencils, telling him he was pathetic. That's all I said. Pathetic. Of course, he instantly began screaming that I was attacking him. James stepped in and asked what was going on, and before I could explain, Jake's crocodile tears started. Mom swooped in as if she were saving a young bird. "What did you do to him?" she screamed, as if I was already guilty. "He destroyed my stuff," I responded, holding out the pencil set as proof. She simply crossed her arms. "You need to let these little things go. This is Christmas. I don't want any drama." I told her it wasn't small to me. That's when she smacked me with it. Not quite the same as previously, but near enough to make my stomach drop. "You're starting to sound just like your father used to. Don't mess this up for me." She said it again, out in front of everyone. My face got hot. Not from humiliation, but from how outspoken she was about it. She wasn't even trying to hide her desire to maintain this beautiful family image. James didn't say anything. He just stroked the back of his neck and glanced aside, as if it didn't bother him. The remainder of the day was terrible. Later, at James's parents' house, Jake made sure to tell his relatives about me. By the time lunch arrived, I realized I was the only kid sitting alone at the end of the table. The people who normally spoke to me were giving me weird side glances. When I asked one of them why, she just whispered, "Jake said, you're mean." I noticed Jake staring from across the table, smirking as if he had just pulled off the greatest prank ever. It wasn't only the youngsters though. While offering me the bread, one of James' sisters said, "You know, you could try being a bit friendlier. Jake says you keep to yourself a lot." As if I was the odd one out for not liking being treated like garbage. When we came home, I was done talking to anyone. I walked immediately to my room and closed the door, only to return later to find some of my old sketchbooks missing from the shelf. They were not thrown away this time. I found them in a box near the garage door. "Why are my sketchbooks in here?" I questioned Mom. "Oh, I'm making some space in your room," she explained, hardly looking up from her phone. "You don't use them anymore." "I use them all the time," I answered, flicking one open to reveal the partially completed sketches. "Well, Jake needs somewhere to keep his Lego sets. You've got too much clutter anyway." That wasn't a problem. That was stuff I had from before we moved in. Things from before Jake even entered the picture. It struck me right then. She wasn't simply letting him do whatever he wanted, she was actively helping. I began storing my most critical belongings in a rucksack that I carried everywhere: clothes, sketchbooks, and anything else I didn't want her to organize or inadvertently damage. I knew the remainder would be fair game for him. The arrogance of it all was no longer astonishing. It was simply exhausting. If I spoke up, I was generating trouble. If I kept quiet, they regarded it as permission to proceed. And if I tried to defend myself, I ended up being the story's villain. That Christmas marked a turning point for me. I didn't suddenly despise them. I had been going there for a long, but it was the first time I recognized I couldn't win. Mom was not going to back me up. James would only step in if it made him appear like a good father. Jake would just keep pushing because no one was stopping him. They had already made it obvious. This was not my family. The difficulty was that I was still stuck living with them. High school did not suddenly make things better. If anything, it encouraged Jake to be more imaginative with the trash he pulled. He was approximately 14 now, tall enough to match me in size, and quick to use it as an intimidation tactic. I wasn't easily scared, but it was taxing to go down the corridor without wondering whether someone was coming to shoulder check you for fun. The event occurred at one of James' family game nights. Jake had been grinning since we sat down, which indicated that he was cooking something. We were playing one of those games with a small spinner. When it was my time to reach for it, Jake accidentally pushed the table. The board slid, my hand surged forward, and my finger smashed against the corner of the table leg. I heard the crack before experiencing it. Sharp, blinding pain surged up my arm. I released the spinning and grasped my hand. "Watch where you're putting your hands," Jake replied calmly, as if I'd been clumsy. James frowned but did not raise his voice. "Mom." She rolled her eyes. "It was an accident. Don't start with the drama." "I think it's broken," I said, holding it up. "Then we'll get it checked tomorrow," she said, as if I'd just told her the milk was out of date. "You'll live." The doctor confirmed it the next day at the clinic: a hairline fracture. I wore a splint for several weeks. Jake never once apologized. In fact, I overheard him telling one of his pals at school that I hit a table like an idiot. The job sabotage occurred several months later. I applied for a part-time position at a local bookstore. Perfect for me. Quiet, steady, and convenient to school. I was one interview away from landing it. That morning I left my folder with my application and CV on the kitchen counter while I ate breakfast. When I got back, it was gone. Jake was in the living room, going through his phone. I inquired if he had seen it. He shrugged. Maybe you left it in your room. I ripped apart my room. Nothing. I had to print a backup copy at the library, which made me late. The interview was awkward and quick, and I could sense the manager was unimpressed. A week later, I discovered my original folder in the garage, tucked underneath a box of Christmas decorations. That was not simply petty, it was deliberate. I informed Mom, anticipating at least a glimmer of concern. She did not even blink. If you want a job, you'll figure it out. Stop blaming Jake for everything that goes wrong in your life. It was the same script every time. I was overly sensitive. I harbored grudges. I needed to be a bigger person. She never asked Jake if he did it. It didn't matter how evident it was. By then, I had stopped seeing Jake as an annoying stepbrother and began to see him as a long-term problem. The only way to fix the situation was to get out. I kept my head down for the rest of the year, focusing on my academics and earning as much money as I could from minor side jobs. I cut lawns, walked dogs, and fixed computers for neighbors to save money for an escape. Every dollar went into a little metal lockbox that I concealed in the lining of my rucksack. I didn't trust my desk drawers. Jake didn't stop, however. If anything, my quietness emboldened him. He'd corner me in the corridor and say curses beneath his breath. He would unplug my laptop charger when I wasn't looking, causing my battery to fail in the middle of an assignment. Once, he accidentally left the freezer open, destroying a bunch of food, and Mom found a way to blame me because I'd made a smoothie earlier. That was the moment I realized there was no sense in proving myself right in this house. They did not want the truth. They wanted me to be quiet and cooperative. By senior year, I had a definite plan. Graduate, attend college, move out, and never look back. I didn't mind living in a shoebox flat. Anything was preferable to staying here. I started keeping a tight schedule: school, library, home, repeat. The less time I spent with Jake, the fewer opportunities he had to pull something. When I received my college acceptance letter, I didn't notify anyone in the house. I kept it to myself for 3 weeks, simply enjoying the fact that I had an exit ticket. As soon as I got housing confirmed, I began collecting my belongings and storing them at Jake's apartment. By the time summer arrived, I was almost living out of a duffel bag. It wasn't quite time to escape, but it was getting close. So by the end of the summer, I was gone. College dorms were not exactly luxurious accommodations, but they were mine. No Jake, no coming into my room to see if anything was broken or gone. I didn't return for holidays, didn't attend birthday parties, and declined every family dinner invitation. For years, I stuck to that strategy. Life was tranquil, and I maintained it that way. Years later, Jake discovered me. It began with a message request on Facebook. "Hey, long time, need to talk." I stared at it for a while before clicking delete. 2 days later, he appeared outside my building. I'm not sure how he even got the address. He leaned against the hood of a beat-up sedan, looking much older than his 21 years. However, the smirk remains the same. "Been a while," he replied as I approached. I didn't bother to return the small conversation. "What do you want?" "Just catching up," he said. "Hatching. Also, I need a place to crash for a bit. Got laid off. My apartment situation's complicated." "No," I replied without thinking about it. "That's it?" he inquired, raising his eyebrows. "No, that's it," I replied, walking past him inside the building. He did not give up. Over the next week, I received texts from random numbers. Some are simply checking in, while others are trying to instill guilt. "We're family, man. Mom would want you to help. It's only temporary." I blocked them all. Then things became quiet. I assumed he'd given up. 2 months later, I received a call from an unknown number. A police officer asked if I was available to come down to the station and answer some questions concerning an ongoing theft investigation. I assumed it had to be an error. I'd never even received a parking ticket. At the station, I was shown a report. Someone had exploited my name and information to open a store credit account and incur charges while purchasing electronics. The business had shaky camera footage, but the guy was about Jake's height and build, and he was driving the same beat-up sedan I had seen outside my building. The police asked if I knew him. "Yeah," I replied. "My stepbrother." They already had their doubts. My driver's license number had been used, but the address on the account was false. He must have received that number years ago, while we were still living under the same roof, while going through my belongings like he routinely did. They had followed the car from the camera to a tow yard, where it had been detained 3 weeks prior under Jake's identity. Even with that, it took me several hours to clear my side. I had to dig up old emails, proof of where I'd been, bank records, everything. They eventually informed me that I was safe, but that they would contact me if further information was required. I left the station with a knot in my chest. I wasn't terrified anymore, but I knew exactly what had happened. Jake had approached me hoping for a free ride. I had turned him down, and now he was trying to draw me into his mess. That night I called Mom. She answered the second ring. "You couldn't help him, could you?" she asked before I spoke. "He tried to frame me for theft," I stated bluntly. "The cops have him on camera." They impounded his car. Jake would absolutely. He's been doing the same thing since I was a kid, only now it's criminal. "You're exaggerating," she replied. "Even if he made a mistake, you should be the bigger person. He's family." "I'm done being the bigger person," I informed her. "I'm done. Period. You can't just cut people out forever." I hung up, saying, "Watch me." Several days later my uncle called. "Your mom says you're making a big deal out of nothing," he told me. "She's upset. Maybe try talking to Jake." "Not happening," I answered. "Tell her she can talk to him when he's out on bail." Jake did not try to contact me again after that. But the harm had already been done, not just because of what he'd tried, but also because his mother's initial response was to defend him. She didn't ask if I was all right. I didn't care that my name was linked to a criminal probe. All she cared about was that I had declined to assist her golden boy. I resolved that this would be the last time I had to deal with either of them. A week later, I changed my phone number, set up mail forwarding to a P.O. box, and ensured that my workplace had stringent no-information procedures in case somebody contacted looking for specifics. I even instructed building security to turn away anyone not on my list. I didn't make any huge announcements about cutting them off. I just ceased existing for them. No phone calls, visits, or, "let's just talk." I knew if I opened the door just a crack, they'd shove it open and take me back into the commotion. The last I heard about Jake was from a coworker who knew someone at the same tow yard that had seized his car. Apparently, he was arrested shoplifting from a hardware store and spent a few weeks in county jail before receiving probation. I didn't smile when I heard it, but I also didn't feel horrible. This wasn't only about him anymore. It was about ensuring that the door remained permanently shut. It had been months since I'd heard from either of them, and I planned to keep it that way. But one Saturday, my grandparents called and asked if I could assist move some boxes in their garage. There's no drama, no hidden agenda. At least that is what I believed. I arrived at midday, got a dolly from the corner, and began stacking old storage containers. About 20 minutes in, I heard tires crunching on gravel. A white SUV drove up the driveway. My gut constricted when I saw Mom walk out. Jake hopped out of the passenger seat, sunglasses on and hands in his pockets, as if he were arriving at a VIP event. "Look who's here," Mom exclaimed, as if she had just seen an old acquaintance. "I had no idea this was a family reunion," I responded, keeping an eye on the dolly. "Oh, don't be dramatic. We just happened to be in the neighborhood." "Yeah, sure," I murmured, adding another bin to the stack. Jake walked over and leaned against the garage door. "Still holding grudges, huh?" I didn't respond. "Guess some people can't grow up," he said, smirking. I continued shifting boxes until he spoke again, this time louder. "You know about that whole crime thing?" "Total misunderstanding." "You really overreacted, man." That prompted me to stop. I set down the package and turned to face him. "Misunderstanding? You used my name and my ID number to steal from a store." Jake shrugged. "Allegedly." Grandma emerged from the kitchen, drying her hands. "What's going on out here?" "Nothing," Mom replied immediately. "Just catching up." "Not nothing," I responded, raising my voice so she couldn't cover it up. "Your son tried to pin a theft on me, and you defended him just like you've defended him every time he's done something." Mom's face stiffened. "This isn't the place." "No, this is exactly the place," I said, pointing at Jake. "Christmas gifts smashed, science projects ruined, fake rumors at school. That was him. My job application for the bookstore. He hid it in the garage so I'd miss the interview. The accidental broken finger during game night. Yeah, not so accidental. And then when all else failed, he tried to make me look like a criminal." Jake laughed beneath his breath. "Man, you keep a list." "I keep proof," I explained, taking a little folder from my rucksack. I had brought it for another purpose, but it now works well. I opened it and displayed the printed screenshots from the police report, the impound record with his name, and a still frame from the store camera of his vehicle. Recognize this? That's your car. That's your name. And this is the only reason I'm not sitting in a holding cell right now. Grandpa approached closer to look. Grandma squinted her eyes at Jake. Is this true? She inquired. Jake's sneer faltered for a half-second before recovering. That's not the whole story. It's the only story that matters, I told myself. Mom stepped forward and grabbed my arm. You're trying to embarrass me in front of my parents. No, I'm making sure everyone knows what you've been covering up for over a decade, I answered back. You're acting just like your father, she yelled. Always looking for a fight, always playing the victim, and you're acting just like you always have, putting your image above your own kid. The hush that followed was piercing. Grandpa peered between us, but nobody moved. Jake finally broke through with a quiet chuckle. Man, you really haven't changed. Neither have you, I replied. Which is why this is it. I'm done. I don't want calls, I don't want visits, and if I see either of you at the store, I'll turn the other way. You're blocked permanently. Mom's face turned red. You can't just cut us out. Watch me. I took my keys off the workbench and strolled past them. Grandma called after me, but I didn't stop. I could feel Mom's scowl on my back and Jake's smirk in the corner of my eye, but I didn't look around. As I got into my car, I could hear Mom's voice break into that high-pitched tone she used when she lost control. You're ruining this family. From the driver's seat I said, it was already ruined. I'm just not living in it anymore. Then I closed the door and drove out of the driveway. Later that night, my phone vibrated with a text from my uncle. Here's the text, with proper punctuation and capitalization. I heard you had a confrontation at Grandma's. Jake yelled at your mother during the journey home. I guess being called out in front of our grandparents damaged his ego. Maybe he realized she couldn't protect him anymore. He also said he was done with her. I didn't respond. I did not need to. 2 days after the altercation at my grandparents' place, I received a call from grandmother. I told your grandfather everything, she explained. He wants to have a family dinner, just you and your mom. No, Jake. I'm already done with her, I explained. This is different, Grandma responded. Your grandfather insists. Says it's important. I didn't enjoy it, but I respected Grandpa enough to attend. He wasn't the sort to drag me into drama without a reason. We had dinner at their place, just the three of us. The tension was palpable from the moment I came in. Mom sat at the table, like she'd just been caught speeding, attempting to appear calm but visibly concerned. Grandpa sat at the head of the table, leaning on his cane, eyes sharp. Before we eat, he was saying, I want to ask you something directly. Everything your grandmother told me about the smashed belongings, the broken finger, the job sabotage, the framing, is it true? Mom forced a laugh. Dad, you can't believe all of that. He's always been dramatic. Answer the question, Grandpa interjected. His voice was low, yet it carried a weight that made people sit up straighter. She looked at me and then back at him. Some of it's exaggerated. He's always misunderstood Jake's. Stop. Grandpa did not raise his voice, but the air in the room changed. I've been a father a long time and I know the difference between a kid causing trouble and a mother enabling abuse. You didn't protect him. You told him to be the bigger person while letting that boy tear him down for over a decade. And now as adults, Jake tries to commit a crime in his name and you defend him. Unacceptable. Mom's jaws constricted. It's more complicated than... No, Grandpa replied, leaning forward. It's simple. You failed as a mother. She sat back, her lips squeezed together in a thin line. I've made my decision, Grandpa added. I am removing you from my will. Your share will go to him, he said, gesturing at me. You've shown you can't be trusted to put family first. But he has. Even after everything, he's worked hard, stayed out of trouble, and built a life without your help. That's the kind of person I want carrying on what we've built. The room went dead silent. Mom's face became pale. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious, he said. I won't reward selfishness and abuse. She turned to me as if I were meant to object. I did not. I simply stared back at her. Grandpa pushed back his chair and stood. Dinner's in the kitchen. Eat if you want, leave if you want. But as far as I'm concerned, this conversation is over. I did not touch the food. I stood up, thanked him for being honest, and walked out without saying anything to her. As far as I was concerned, she had finally been forced to hear the truth, and I didn't have to be present for the consequences. That night I cut her off permanently. No more protracted debates, no more second chances. She could understand what Grandpa said. She may cry over the will, she could try to twist it however she wanted. She did try. Over the next 2 weeks I began receiving random calls from numbers I did not recognize. Some of the numbers were incorrect, but the pauses before the voice spoke indicated that she was sitting there, listening to me say hello and contemplating whether to speak or hang up. Then came the messages from other people, including my uncle, a couple cousins, and even one of James's sisters. She just wants to talk, they'd explain. She's sorry. She's not the same person anymore. But I knew who she was. She hadn't changed since we moved into that place. The only reason she was trying now was that her golden guy had also cut her off. Grandma had previously told me that Jake seldom spoke to her these days. Following the vehicle incident, their relationship deteriorated. Without him, without me, and without James's family's support, she had no one to help her create her own world. Grandma told me she spends much of her time at home and isn't invited to as many things. James works long hours and usually keeps his head down. He has never confronted me about any of this, but he has also not spoken up for her. Just remains neutral. Like if he ignores it for long enough, it will vanish. Jake keeps his distance, and her own parents are no longer on her side. The woman who previously boasted about her wonderful mixed family to anybody who would listen was now sitting in a half-empty house, surrounded by the repercussions she said would never happen to her. Every time someone attempted to mediate, I shut it down in the same manner. I am done. She made her decision years ago. I didn't hate her. Hate consumes too much energy. I just wasn't going to sit in a room with her and let her half apologize, shift the blame, and attempt to rewrite history. I wasn't going to invite her into my future so she could bring old scars to new areas. She could call, beg, and write letters. They would all remain unanswered. Grandpa's words at that dinner stayed with me. I won't reward selfishness and abuse. It was the first time in my life that someone had spoken it out there in front of her without sugarcoating or making excuses. I didn't need to say anything else, so I let the silence speak for itself. Mom is now alone, and it is not due to a twist of fate or misunderstanding. She is alone because she created a life in which everyone else's comfort took second place to her own image. When that image shattered, so did the people who had stood by her. I don't intend to see her again. Not during family gatherings, in hospitals, or at funerals. Some doors remain closed because opening them would only invite the same storm back in, and mine is permanently locked,